looking forward to continuing. I guess this would be the fourth in our series of chats,
Yeah.
based on our growing friendship as we discovered through our publishers who are friends that we both have books releasing in May of 2020. And we've had the privilege of reading each other's. I have been reading and loving your memoir, The Minister's Wife.
And I have been reading and loving This Life We Share. And I will be recommending it widely.
Well, I am as well. And for any friends listening in, that's the last commercial you're going to hear. Because we have to
That's right.
honest.
Let's get to the
Karen Stiller and I are not slick. We're both clergy wives. We're both writers. Slick is what we ain't.
Right.
We're not about infomercials. But what we are about is we've been having a series of chats about friendship and isolation, about moving. Our last one was talking about marriage. And today we want to talk about parenting and family stuff, but probably specifically through the lens of clergy families. Now, Karen's book is a memoir called The Minister's Wife, so you can guess what it's about, but it's about faith and doubt and loneliness and moving and the best parts of the ministry and some of the really hard parts at the same time, where This Life We Share is informed by all I've learned through years in the ministry, but it's also written for women of any age and any season, as Karen says as well.
And Maggie, I want to just say, what struck me as I thought about this talk is that you cover a lot of topics, but you actually, in terms of percentage-wise of your chapters, you spend a fair bit of time on parenting. And it's
good.
Yeah, that's what struck me. And it's so important to us. I mean, it's central to us as mothers, right? I mean, obviously.
It's like with these conversations you and I are having, neither of us want to look at them because we don't like looking at ourselves on video. And I have a hard time rereading my own book. Okay. So when you said I cover it, I said, oh, I do? Good.
Yes. Good. I mean, it's throughout the whole book, but you have several chapters actually dedicated to talking about parenting. And I mean, it's a topic that weighs heavily on our hearts. It's what wakes us up in the middle of the night and means we can't get back to sleep, right?
Exactly. Because who was it who said decades ago, parenting is when you wear your heart, the rest of your life, you're wearing your heart outside of your body.
Yeah.
Because there will always be those people walking the planet that you love more than life itself, that you would die for. Not that I wouldn't die for my husband, I would. And there'd be a few select other people out there I'd throw myself under the bus for, but the kids, and I'm a grandma too. And you and I both had 3 kids from scratch. That's how I put it, meaning.
I love that. I want to say to you, writer to writer, I love that. When I first read The 3 Children from Scratch, I thought, that's good.
Well, that's because I never like calling them biological, because I kind of think every child is biological. I don't know what they're not, if they're not biological.
Right.
Test tube baby, whatever, even those are biological. But I've used that term, Karen, because as I talk about in the book, when our children were 11, they were 10, 12, and 14. We had 2 children join our home who were 11 and 12. So suddenly we had 5 kids between 10 and 14 who within 3 years all moved into their teenage years together. And it was pretty crazy. Some really tough times, some hilarious times. Like we had our own designated parking space at the orthodontist because 4 of them were in braces at once. And it was, and the orthodontist actually said, I said, okay, number 5, I'm going to be bringing him in soon. He said, you got 4 who are in braces right now. Mrs. Rowe, I'll give you the 5th kid free. And of course, the 5th kid didn't need braces, but it was a nice thought.
That is nice.
So all that to say is we've raised sort of a blended family, 3 as we call it from scratch, 2 came to us half-baked, and we consider them our kids. They were our foster children, and they're now older too. And Beautiful. Your kids, you're in a younger season of life than me. Your kids are still home?
Well, two are home. So we have, a married grown son who's in law school, and then our 2 youngest are living with us and in university. So we're through, I think we're through the thick of it, but I think for, pardon me, both of us, a preoccupation raising children in clergy homes was a desire to make sure that church didn't actually wreck their lives or destroy their faith or stop it in its, growth at any time. I know I share in my book that part of what I did is, even before I was a mom, if I met the adult child of a pastor, I'd ask them questions like, what worked? do you still go to church? Like what happened for you in your childhood home? And that kind of, I think, helped steer how we tried to parent our kids. But I know you've raised faithful kids, and you had a wonderful experience just yesterday with your son. What will you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah, just
On a
briefly.
Sunday?
Well, thank you. On a Sunday, yes. Our oldest son is now 37 and went through seminary, got his Master of Divinity several years ago, and has gone through a long ordination process with his church in the Boston area. Yesterday, he was to have been ordained. But because we're recording this in the midst of a pandemic, we were not able to travel. None of the several hundreds of family and friends and clergy who were to have been there could be there. So that's been postponed. But we did have the joy, Karen, of he is with a large multi-campus church and was asked to preach yesterday. So my husband got to project it from our smartphone through Facebook and the web onto our TV. And it was broadcast several times throughout the day, and we watched each time with tears streaming down my face. Because I think, as you know, we're just so grateful that he came through those ministry years with realistic but positive impressions. And I give our churches the credit for that they did not ever, to my knowledge, really treat him as if, or our other children, as if they needed to be better than all the other children in the church, or as if automatically they were going to be hellions. The only, this story, the only time was when we were considering perhaps a private school for our oldest son, thinking, do we go public, do we go private? We took him for an interview. He was 14, to a private school where we were living. And the first thing the headmaster said to him is, "Oh, you're a PK." And Adam said, "Excuse me? Well, you know what a PK is." And our son was kind of blank. And he said, "Well, you're a pastor's kid." And our son said, "Oh, well, yeah, my dad's a pastor." "Well, you know what they say about pastors' kids." And our son was like, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, they're usually the ones that are real hellions in school." And our son just sat there and stared at him. And we politely said, "Thank you very much for the interview." We left and we never went back.
Yeah.
Because I thought that, yeah, he was automatically stereotyping our son, that he would either have to be the exemplar for the school because of what his dad did, or he would be the worst kid in the school, neither of which was true or was fair.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed you and I both talk about in our books, Karen, is you said that you and Brent resolved never to speak badly about the church in front of them.
Yeah.
And we felt the same. It's sort of like parents who are going through difficult marriage times who resolve, we're not going to speak about that in front of our kids. We don't want the kids to choose sides. Last thing you and I would want is our kids to choose sides between like the world and God or the church. They're children of the church. They grow up. The church helps birth them in a sense. But and that was something you and I both and our husbands agreed on. Our way of explaining it to the kids when we had tough situations is just to say, kids, hurt people.
Yes.
Because they have been hurt. They're going to maybe take that out on the clergy or the church, but this really isn't the church. These are difficult, prickly people that we are dealing with. But you know what? God loves them, and this has nothing to do with you guys.
Right.
And how you and Brent handle those.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, I think we have to remember our children are tender and they hear and see everything. And so it's not about covering up, but it's about being appropriate. And it's so easy to sort of overshare, I think. And then they don't have maybe yet the discernment to remember that most people are great and the church has so many wonderful things. So, and for us as parents, I don't mention this in the book, but a big part of our children's faith journey was sending them to Christian camp in the summers. So that's like, if I ever offer advice on parenting, which I rarely do, but that's what I say is send your kids to camp and remind them that there's a big, big world out there full of faithful people that have nothing to do with your home church and
that's right.
Kids their age and so on. So I really think that's so important. But
we did that as well. And it's expensive. It's not, camp isn't cheap.
Right. It's an
we
investment.
did everything we could, to get them out of their little culture so it didn't get too ingrown and get to be with other kids of other Christian faith traditions and give them a broader world.
Yeah. And I think your tone in your book is so reassuring toward, say, young, busy moms who, were pastors' wives or not, but that even in terms of your spiritual disciplines and so on, that you are being grown through your life as a mother. And I deeply resonated with that. And I thought, there is the sanctification of motherhood that has been a big part of my journey, I think, where, and I mean this in showing me how terrible I can be, lifting that big mirror up
That's right.
and look at how impatient you sound, or look at, and then accepting, all the grace and all the mess of parenting. And so I think that's a very real thing for mothers. And
it is. And the danger of comparison, which is a
yes,
lot harder on moms, in particular in this generation, and certainly in mine. I didn't grow up, my kids weren't raised with social media. It didn't exist till not that long ago. And it's hard. Many young moms talk about this. They see so many parenting tips online, or they see these carefully curated pictures of other homes where it looks like everybody has got their act together and the kids are perfectly dressed and they got the photo shoots and they're doing all these creative things and they're having their quiet time every morning.
right.
And man, I think you say very honestly in your book, we're clergy families. We didn't have what they used to call the family altar. I would like to say we did.
Me too.
The most I could do, Karen, especially when we had the 5 at home and they were racing out the door, is I'd put my hand on their head and I'd say, God be with you through the day. And all you do and all you say, amen, and shove them out the door.
That's good. I didn't even do that, but that's so good.
But sometimes
here's one, let me just say, if there's one other like tip-like thing I would want to say, is that all those things add up and count. You do a bunch of little things spread over a bunch of years, it's going to be okay in the end. I tell myself that about parenting, and I tell myself that about exercising.
That's right. Because it's like, I don't know who said it, but attitudes and actions and habits of the heart are often more caught than taught. They go more what they see when they see that we're loving each other and we're loving the church, even though she can be tough to love sometimes. But I think they catch that love. And another thing you say, Karen, and I resonated with this for all younger parents, is we've got to not compare ourselves with others. We're all in progress with our children. It is a process. Sometimes we can't even compare one child to the other. They may be raised in the same environment, and yet they've got different tendencies. And one may go one way, one may go the other. And I remember you said often you had to struggle with the feeling of inadequacy, which I have too. You said spiritually, materially, practically, and that would grow like a weed in your garden.
Yes.
So I
absolutely.
thought we can't compare our kids to other clergy kids or to other kids, but simply say, Lord, help me nurture them and raise them with knowing their dad and I love each other, that we love the church, but more than that, we love them. When we were raising our kids, particularly with the foster children who came out of a difficult background, we borrowed a line from Phil Yancey when he said, when I used to say to the kids, there's nothing you can do that would make us ever love you less. Nothing you could do that would ever make us love you more. And I remember our foster daughter at 16, when we had a very difficult conversation about some things I discovered, I said that to her. And for me, that wasn't a new concept. I was plagiarizing Phil Yancey. But to her, she got tears in her eyes and she actually hugged me, because I think she knew I meant it. That, there would be consequences for some choices she made that would not lead to what we wanted for her life, but it didn't make us love her any less. That love was not conditional. So
you've probably, Maggie, this speaks to the reality of parenting, even at the age I've been yelling at my dog. I've had myself on mute, listening with one ear to your wonderful wisdom and listening to my doorbell ring. So because my daughter's locked out, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. But that's all right. I saw you motioning and I thought, okay, if any young moms are watching this, they can relate. Because just yesterday, bless my daughter-in-law, when our son was doing preaching and everything looked all perfect because it was recorded and it was from a platform, she simultaneously shot a 10-second video of what their home life was like when she was trying to watch her own husband preach from not on TV, but projected through the website. And the 1-year-old was yanking on her and yelling, and the 3-year-old was upstairs screaming. And she said, 10 seconds in a happy pastor's home.
That's so,
And I
that's
thought,
so good.
God bless
So
you for
helpful.
showing
Yeah.
that the house is messy and the kids are yelling, but that's okay. That's life.
Exactly. Yeah, I
And,
think that's what I would love to leave younger moms with, is that it's going to be okay. And
That's
that
right.
you can be, and in fact, it actually helps other people in your church. It helps people in your church when you are transparent with your parenting challenges. And that doesn't mean spilling your kids' lives all over the place, but it does
Right.
mean acknowledging that this is hard work.
Mhm.
You know, we're in this together. No one's got it all figured out. There are no perfect families. I mean, if there's one thing
No.
you and I have both learned in church land, is that's not true. There are no perfect families, and
No.
we're all in this together. So be encouraged, right?
And as writers, yeah. And as writers, we both know that wonderful truth that the kids are just living in a particular chapter of their story, that the end isn't written yet.
Exactly.
And
And
like
it's
in
a
any
big,
good
long
novel,
story.
there are some crises thing that happen, but and I want to say this to parents of teenagers who might be joining our conversation, Karen. When I think about our son, who's now a pastor, is now 37, when I flash back 20 years, I never would have imagined he would be where he is now. Because I remember, and Adam won't mind me saying this, when he was in high school, I remember thinking, he's so self-centered. I said, gosh, his dad's not like that. I hope I'm not like that. But this kid seems to only think about himself. Well, he was 17. Duh, go figure.
Right.
I had to realize he's not yet who he will be one day.
Absolutely.
So as an older mom, I can say, young moms, hang in there. They are not yet who they will one day be. Keep loving them, keep believing in them, get the resources and the help that they need, give them the space to be who they're going to be. And if you're raising them in a clergy family, Karen, I know our time is almost up. It goes so fast. But I would love to close. If you don't mind, I'd like to read from page 87 of my favorite new memoir, The Minister's Wife, because I love this analogy, especially for children who are raised in a pastoral or clergy family. Because my friend Karen Stiller wrote, the church, the sixth member of our family, is a weird and sometimes a wonderful auntie. She can throw a tantrum or show up with an armful of gifts. She demands attention, but she also hugs you tight. She might reach over and give you a smack right out of the blue. Sometimes Brent, that's your husband, might must rush to her side. That's his job. It's what he's been asked to do. And we, the children and I, are a part of it too, just by loving him. So
Thanks,
I love
Maggie.
that you recognize there's some unique challenges in being a clergy family, but we also have this wonderful, loving, sometimes eccentric aunt who loves us back and can do lovely things for us, even though sometimes she kind of cuffs us on the ear too, when she thinks we're not performing up to snuff. And we're going to have both, and that's okay. We will not only survive, but you can thrive.
Yeah, and find a friend. Find another minister's wife who you can talk to.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
I am going to go let my dog out.
The PD, the pastor's dog, is saying,
nobody behaves right.
Exactly. Okay. Well, again, this is Maggie Rowe. I've been talking to Karen Stiller, the author of, and I've got it upside down, The Minister's Wife. Thanks for joining our conversation.